Do you remember that electrifying moment when your computer's 2400 baud modem screeched to life? That iconic dial-up tone was the soundtrack of the 1980s. But the 80s were so much more than early internet magic. They had a neon-colored cassette-playing sugar-filled vibe. Nothing beats the feeling of rushing home after school to pop a VHS into the player or blowing into an NES cartridge, hoping it would finally work. Now, before we hit play on the VHS of nostalgia, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more blasts from the past, and share with your fellow 80s kids. And now, let's rewind to the 80s, manually, of course, or maybe with the car-shaped rewinder. The tech we loved. Before high-speed internet, we had dial-up modems, and boy were they loud. That signature screeching sound meant you were connecting to the online world, at least if no one picked up the phone and kicked you offline. CompuServe and Prodigy were among the first services to offer online forums, email, and even news. It felt futuristic at the time, even though pages loaded at the speed of a snail. Nothing was more frustrating than popping an NES cartridge only for the screen to glitch out. But every 80s kid knew the secret. You'd take it out, blow into it, wipe it on your shirt, and pop it back in, praying to the gaming gods that it would finally work. And when it did, pure bliss. The Nintendo Entertainment System was a game changer, with classics like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Duck Hunt. If you wanted to play video games on your TV, you had to use this little switch. You'd flip it from TV to game to make the magic happen. Fashion and accessories. LA Gear was the brand if you wanted to be the coolest kid in school. These sneakers came in bright colors with neon laces that practically glowed. Some even had tiny little lights in the soles. Jelly shoes, cheap, plastic, and absolutely everywhere. They looked cute, but let's be real. They made your feet sweat like crazy and left you with those weird crisscross tan lines. Leg warmers. In the 80s, you didn't have to be a dancer to rock leg warmers. Thanks to Flashdance and Fame, they became a must-have accessory for both kids and adults. Side ponytails. If you didn't wear your hair in a ridiculously high side ponytail, were you even an 80s kid? Bonus points if it was held up with a scrunchie. Hair crimpers. If you wanted the ultimate 80s hair, you had to have a crimper. These magical tools turned flat hair into zigzag waves in minutes. They were perfect for big, bold hairstyles that stood out. Everyone from pop stars to kids in school rocked the crimp look. Fingerless gloves. Thank Madonna, Michael Jackson, and every action movie hero of the decade. Fingerless gloves were the ultimate fashion statement. They served no real purpose, but at least we looked edgy. Kangaroo sneakers with tiny pockets on the side. Who needs a wallet when you've got kangaroo sneakers? These stylish 80s kicks had a little zippered pocket on the side. They were perfect for hiding a few coins, a folded up note from a friend, or, if you were really cool, a secret stash of candy. Every kid felt like a spy when they had something hidden in their shoe. Toys and games. Pogo ball. A ball with a platform that you bounced around on. Sounds simple, right? Well, they were impossible to use without looking ridiculous. Part toy, part extreme sport. The pogo ball was like a mini trampoline you had to balance on while trying not to wipe out. It took serious skill to master, but who cared? We were having the time of our lives. Of course, a lot of kids just ended up falling on their faces. Atari 2600. The Atari 2600 was the gaming system that started it all. With its simple joystick, it brought video games into the living room. Games like Pac-Man and Space Invaders were legendary. The graphics were basic, but the fun was endless. If you had an Atari, your house was the place to be. The Oregon Trail game. Every kid in the 80s played the Oregon Trail in their school's computer lab. You'd spend hours trying to keep your wagon party alive on the way, only to die of dysentery every time. At least it made school fun. The Viewmaster. The Viewmaster was like a tiny movie theater in your hands. You slid in a circular reel, clicked the side, and saw beautiful images in 3D. Some reels had cartoons, while others had nature scenes or famous landmarks. Ah, the mystery grab bag. One of the biggest gambles of childhood. We all spent our allowance on a bag that promised surprise goodies inside. Sometimes you got something amazing, like a cool toy or trading cards. Other times, you got cheap plastic junk. Koosh balls. These weird rubbery balls were fun to throw and even better to fidget with. Plus, they made the most satisfying whoosh sound when you swung them around. The hacky sack. You weren't officially cool unless you could keep a hacky sack in the air for at least 10 kicks. Extra street cred if you could do tricks. Food and snacks. There was nothing better than ripping open a new box of cereal and digging for the prize at the bottom. Sure, your parents told you to wait until you finished the cereal, but nobody followed that rule. Hubba Bubba Squeeze Pop. Whoever decided to package liquid bubble gum in a tube that looked exactly like toothpaste was either a genius or a total troublemaker. If you were an 80s kid, you definitely tried to prank someone by putting this in the bathroom and pretending it was actual toothpaste. It was sticky and sugary, a dentist's worst nightmare, but 80s kids couldn't get enough of it. Nothing hit the spot on a hot summer day like a Flintstones push-up pop. These brightly colored frozen treats came in a cardboard tube, and you had to push the plastic stick at the bottom to get to the good stuff. The best part? That satisfying moment when you finally got that last bit out. If you pushed too hard, though, you'd send it flying onto the pavement. Jell-O pudding pops. Bill Cosby commercials aside, these frozen pudding treats were amazing. These frozen treats were thick, creamy, and had that perfect balance of chocolate or vanilla flavor. Sadly, they eventually disappeared from store shelves. But 80s kids will always remember how good they were. Now and later candy. Hard as a rock at first, then super chewy. If you had braces, you were absolutely not supposed to eat these, but we all did anyway. Now and laters were the candy you'd buy in bulk. They were so tough at first that you practically needed a jackhammer to bite into them, but once they softened up, they were perfect. There was something magical about fast food in the 80s, and McDonald's color-changing cups were proof. You'd pour a cold drink into these seemingly normal plastic cups and boom, they'd change colors right before your eyes. It felt like sorcery. And because they were reusable, every 80s kid had at least one or two of these at home. Bubble Jug powder gum. Gum in powder form? Only the 80s could come up with something this wild. Hubba Bubba Bubble Jug looked like a mini milk carton. But inside, it was filled with pink powder that somehow transformed into chewing gum when you put it in your mouth. It made a mess, and half the fun was just dumping the powder on your tongue before it even turned into gum. Going out to eat in the 80s was an event. The best restaurants had arcade games built right into the booths. You could munch on fries while trying to get a high score in Pac-Man or Donkey Kong. Parents loved it because it kept kids entertained. Kids loved it because, well, arcade games and food? What could be better? Fast food chains in the 80s knew how to get kids excited. They made everything collectible. If you went to McDonald's or Burger King, chances were you walked out with a special cup featuring your favorite movie, cartoon, or sports team. Some kids actually kept them as real collectibles. Others just used them until the designs faded away in the dishwasher. TV movies and commercials. The Toys R Us commercials. That jingle was burned into every 80s kid's brain. Who didn't love a trip to Toys R Us in the 80s? The commercials made it seem like the most magical place on earth, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Walking through those aisles was a dream come true. The Disney Sunday night movie intro. Before Disney Plus existed, we waited all week for the Disney Sunday night movie. That intro was a signal to drop everything and gather around the TV. Pure magic. And who could forget the Unsolved Mysteries theme song? Even if you weren't paying attention, the moment that song came on, you felt like you were about to be abducted by aliens. That thing still gives me the chills. Morris the cat was not just any cat. He was a full-blown celebrity. This orange tabby was the face of 9 Lives cat food and had the attitude of a movie star. He was sassy, well-fed, and always had something sarcastic to say. People loved him because he had personality. His commercials were everywhere. And even if you did not have a cat, you knew who Morris was. G.I. Joe PSA commercial. Every 80s kid can probably still hear the famous G.I. Joe PSA slogan. And knowing is half the battle. We all felt like we were part of the G.I. Joe squad. The episodes were meant to teach kids important life lessons. But we were all just trying to figure out why Cobra Commander sounded like a snake with a cold. Before VHS won the war, Betamax tapes were supposed to be the future of home entertainment. They had better picture quality and were smaller than VHS. But they were also more expensive. Families who owned a Betamax player just ended up stuck with a machine that nobody made tapes for anymore. School supplies. If you didn't have a Trapper Keeper, you weren't cool. These bulky, Velcro closed folders were filled with notes, doodles, and probably a few secret love letters. School supplies in the 80s were anything but boring. Plastic rulers filled with liquid and glitter were a must-have. When you tilted them, the glitter swirled around like magic. Kids would spend more time playing with their rulers than actually measuring anything. Erasable pens seemed like the greatest invention ever. You could write, make a mistake, and erase it without needing whiteout. In theory, they were amazing. In reality, the ink never fully disappeared, and it sometimes smudged everywhere. Still, every kid wanted one. Ladies, remember your caboodles? That plastic treasure chest held all your makeup, scrunchies, and friendship pins. It was like a portable vanity, and you felt like a Hollywood star every time you opened it. Friendship pins. These tiny safety pins with colorful beads were a sign of true friendship. They were the 80s version of BFF necklaces. You'd spend hours making them, trading them with besties, and then proudly wearing them on your shoelaces. If someone gave you one, you were bonded for life. And that's a wrap on our totally tubular trip back to the 80s. How many of these unlocked a core memory for you? Which ones did you own, play with, or desperately beg your parents for? Let us know in the comments. See you in the next video.